Sofia, the engineer who saved my company? The millionaire groom's voice echoed through the cathedral as every guest turned to stare at me, standing there in my grease-stained coveralls while my sister's perfect wedding crumbled around us. She's the real owner of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm Sofia. I'm 29, and just 3 hours earlier, my sister Isabella had looked me up and down in my oil-stained work clothes and delivered the words that still stung. "You're just a car mechanic, Sofia. You embarrass us. It's better if you don't come to my wedding." The sharp click of her designer heels on the garage concrete as she walked away, surveying my workplace like she'd stepped into a sewer, should have been the end of it. Another family humiliation. Another reminder that I was the disappointment who chose coveralls over cocktail dresses. What Isabella didn't know, what none of my family knew as they prepared for her dream wedding to Rodrigo Mendoza, heir to a billion-dollar manufacturing empire, was that the woman they'd spent years dismissing as just another grease monkey had quietly built an engineering consulting firm that Fortune 500 companies fought to hire. While they saw dirty fingernails and assumed failure, I was the ghost CEO behind some of the industry's most revolutionary efficiency transformations. And when Rodrigo's company faced a catastrophic production crisis that threatened to bankrupt them before the honeymoon was over, guess who got the emergency call at 11 a.m. on wedding day? The same embarrassing sister they'd just banned from the family photos. Standing on those cathedral steps, in my Rodriguez auto repair coveralls, facing a crowd of politicians, business elites, and society photographers, I realized this wasn't just about saving a wedding anymore. This was about proving that success doesn't come with a dress code, that sometimes the person you underestimate is the one holding all the power, and that the hands they thought were only good for changing oil had actually been changing entire industries. Before I tell you how I went from family disappointment to front-page Forbes feature in one explosive day, and how my sister's face went pale when she realized the truth, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been the family disappointment who had the last laugh. Because trust me, the look on their faces when they discovered what I really do for a living? Absolutely priceless. The disappointment in my family's eyes wasn't new. It started the day I chose mechanical engineering over the respectable career paths they'd mapped out for me. While Isabella pursued her business degree at the prestigious private university our parents could barely afford, I was getting my hands dirty in community college automotive programs. "Sofia's going through a phase," my mother would tell her friends when they asked about my career choice. "She'll come to her senses eventually." That was 8 years ago. The phase never ended. Isabella had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect boyfriend, perfect everything. She landed her marketing job at a boutique firm straight out of college, earning $45,000 a year at the kind of place where she could wear designer clothes and attend networking events. Meanwhile, I was crawling under cars, earning calluses and my parents' quiet shame. What they didn't see were the late-night calls from manufacturing plants when their production lines failed, or the consultation fees I quietly deposited, sometimes $15,000 for a single weekend of troubleshooting. While Isabella stressed about making rent on her studio apartment, I'd paid cash for my house 3 years earlier. "When are you going to get a real job?" my father asked during every family dinner. "You have an engineering degree. Why are you wasting it in some garage?" The questions hurt, because they never bothered to understand what I actually did. They saw the coveralls and assumed I was just changing oil and rotating tires. They never asked about the complex diagnostic work, the custom modifications, or why executives from Detroit called me personally when their engineers couldn't solve production bottlenecks. Isabella's attitude got worse when she started dating Rodrigo 2 years ago. Suddenly, she was traveling in circles with real money, country club dinners, charity galas, vacation homes in Aspen. The more elevated her world became, the more embarrassed she grew of her mechanic sister. "Do you have to tell people what Sofia does for work?" I overheard her asking my mother before a family barbecue, where Rodrigo would meet everyone. Can't we just say she's in automotive engineering and leave it at that? If only she knew that the automotive engineering included redesigning assembly line protocols for 3 major manufacturers and holding patents on efficiency systems that saved companies millions annually. The breaking point came during last Christmas dinner. Rodrigo's parents were joining us. Powerful, influential people who owned manufacturing plants across 3 countries. I'd worked a double shift and arrived late, still in my work clothes, because I hadn't had time to change after flying back from a consulting job in Germany. Sofia, really? Isabella hissed as I walked in. You couldn't make an effort? These people are important. Sorry, some of us actually work for a living, I shot back, not mentioning that my work that week had involved saving a BMW supplier $2.3 million in production costs. Rodrigo's father, Carlos Mendoza, looked me up and down with barely concealed disgust. So you're the mechanic we've heard about, he said, his tone making it clear what he thought of blue-collar work. That's right, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I could have mentioned that Mendoza Industries used efficiency protocols I developed, but why ruin the surprise? How? Interesting, his wife added with a thin smile. It's so important to have tradespeople to keep society running. The dismissal in her voice was unmistakable. I was the help, useful perhaps, but not someone worth knowing. Isabella jumped in quickly. Sofia actually has an engineering degree. She just chooses to work in automotive repair. Such a waste, Carlos mused. With proper guidance, she could have made something of herself. I almost laughed. If he only knew that his company's latest production upgrade was based on specifications I'd written. That the efficiency improvements he'd been bragging about at dinner came from consulting work his own procurement team had commissioned. That night, I lay awake thinking about the look in their eyes. Not just disappointment. Actual embarrassment that someone, like me, was connected to their family. Isabella called the next morning with an apology that wasn't really an apology. You know, they didn't mean anything by it, she said. They're just from a different world. Maybe next time you could dress up a little, make more of an effort? More of an effort. As if building a 7-figure consulting practice while maintaining my cover as just another mechanic wasn't effort enough. 3 days before the wedding, everything changed. I was underneath a vintage Camaro, working on a custom exhaust system, when those familiar designer heels clicked across my garage floor. Isabella stood there in her bridal glow, fresh from her final dress fitting, clutching her phone like a weapon. Sofia, we need to talk. I rolled out, wiping grease from my hands. If this is about the wedding gift, I already told you. It's about the guest list, she interrupted, her voice tight. There's been a change. Something in her tone made my stomach drop. What kind of change? Isabella took a breath, the kind you take before delivering bad news. Rodrigo's family has been very specific about the wedding's image, with all the media attention, the society photographers, the political guests. She trailed off, unable to meet my eyes. Just say it, Bella. You can't come. The words tumbled out in a rush. Rodrigo's parents specifically asked that we keep the guest list to immediate family only, people who fit the image they're trying to project. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. You're uninviting me from your wedding. It's not personal, Sofia. It's business. This wedding is about merging 2 important families, creating the right connections, the right impression. Her voice grew stronger, more convinced of her own reasoning. You working in a garage, it complicates the narrative. The narrative. I repeated the words slowly. You know what I mean. When people ask what my sister does for work, what am I supposed to say? That you're a mechanic? Do you know how that looks? That was it. The final straw. 29 years of being the family disappointment, 8 years of being ashamed of my career, months of watching my sister plan the wedding of the century while treating me like a dirty secret. You're right, I said quietly. I embarrass you. Isabella looked relieved. I knew you'd understand. But she had no idea what I really understood. What Isabella didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that Rodriguez auto repair was just the tip of an iceberg that would have made their social climbing hearts stop. The garage was my cover, my passion project, my way of staying connected to the hands-on work I loved. But my real business? That was something else entirely. It started small, 5 years ago. A local manufacturer had a production line that kept jamming, costing them $50,000 a day in downtime. Their engineers were stumped. Out of desperation, they asked if I knew anything about industrial machinery. 3 hours later, I'd identified the problem, a timing issue in their conveyor synchronization, that their $200 an hour consultants had missed. They paid me $5,000 for what amounted to adjusting 3 sensors and rewriting some basic code. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. My mechanical engineering degree, combined with my practical experience, gave me a perspective that pure academics, or pure theorists, couldn't match. I understood how machines really worked, not just how they were supposed to work. Within 6 months, word had spread. Small manufacturers started calling with problems their in-house teams couldn't solve. I worked nights and weekends, charging consultation fees that made my garage salary look like pocket change. $10,000 here, $15,000 there, sometimes $25,000 for a week-long efficiency overhaul. By year 2, I'd incorporated as Precision Industrial Solutions. I rented a small office downtown, hired 2 junior engineers, and started taking on bigger clients. My parents thought I was just working overtime at the garage. Isabella assumed I was struggling to make ends meet because I drove an old pickup truck and wore thrift store clothes. If only they'd looked at my tax returns. Year 3 was when everything exploded. Ford's assembly plant in Detroit had a catastrophic efficiency problem. Their new electric vehicle line was running at 40% capacity, bleeding millions weekly. Their senior engineers, their outside consultants, their corporate efficiency experts, nobody could figure out why the robots kept missing their timing windows. They found me through a referral from one of my smaller clients. The initial consultation fee alone was $50,000. I spent 3 days walking their floor, analyzing their systems, talking to their line workers. The problem wasn't mechanical, it was communication. Their automated systems were using outdated protocols that created microsecond delays in data transfer. I rewrote their entire coordination algorithm in 2 weeks. Production efficiency jumped to 87% within a month. Ford paid me $800,000 for that job and offered me a permanent position at twice what their senior vice presidents made. I turned it down. By then, I was making more as an independent consultant than their executives earned in salary. Word travels fast in manufacturing circles. General Motors called 6 months later with a similar problem, then BMW's North American division, then Tesla's Nevada plant. Each project paid more than the last. Each success brought bigger clients with more complex problems. I kept the work quiet, traveling under the radar, signing non-disclosure agreements that kept my name out of company press releases. As far as my family knew, I was still just Sofia, who got her hands dirty for a living. The irony was delicious. While Isabella stressed about making her $45,000 stretch to cover her designer wardrobe and downtown apartment, I was quietly banking consulting fees that averaged $300,000 per project. While my parents worried about my financial future, I was diversifying a portfolio worth $2.8 million. By year 4, Precision Industrial Solutions had grown to 12 employees. We occupied an entire floor of a downtown office building. My business cards didn't have my name on them. They read Chief Technical Officer with just my initials. Most clients knew me only as S. Rodriguez, the enigmatic efficiency expert who could solve problems nobody else could touch. The respect in the industry was intoxicating. Senior executives who wouldn't normally give a mechanic the time of day hung on my every word during board presentations. CFOs personally thanked me for saving their companies millions. My recommendations shaped production decisions at some of the world's largest manufacturers. I started getting invitations to industry conferences as a keynote speaker. MIT's engineering department asked me to guest lecture on practical applications of industrial efficiency theory. The Wall Street Journal wanted to interview me for a piece on industrial innovation pioneers. I declined them all. My family's shame was my protection. As long as they saw coveralls and assumed failure, I could operate in the shadows, building an empire they couldn't comprehend. The breakthrough came in year 5. Toyota's Kentucky plant was hemorrhaging money on their new hybrid line. 6 months of internal analysis had failed to identify why their quality control kept flagging defects that didn't actually exist. They were rejecting 30% of perfectly good vehicles, then spending additional resources to fix problems that weren't there. I spent a week observing their inspection protocols. The issue wasn't with their manufacturing, it was with their sensors. The quality control algorithms were calibrated for their traditional engines, but hybrid systems generated different electromagnetic signatures that the sensors interpreted as defects. Fixing it required recalibrating hundreds of sensors and rewriting their entire quality assurance protocol. The work took 3 months. Toyota's efficiency improved by 35%, saving them an estimated $50 million annually. They paid me $1.2 million. But more importantly, they insisted on featuring the project in their annual sustainability report. For the first time, my work got public recognition. That's when Forbes noticed. The article was supposed to be about Toyota's efficiency improvements. But the reporter, digging deeper into the story, discovered that the miracle worker behind the transformation was a woman who operated out of a small consulting firm, who'd revolutionized manufacturing processes across multiple industries, who'd saved Fortune 500 companies hundreds of millions of dollars. The reporter wanted to interview me for a follow-up piece. The industrial efficiency revolutionary, they were calling it. The angle was irresistible. A young female engineer, working independently, solving problems that stumped entire corporate teams. I agreed to the interview on one condition. They couldn't publish until after my sister's wedding. I wanted to give Isabella her perfect day before my secret came out. The Forbes photographer came to my office downtown, where awards I'd won lined the walls next to patents I'd filed. The contrast with my family's perception was striking. While they saw a woman who couldn't afford nice clothes, I was actually someone who chose simplicity over flash, who preferred investing money over spending it. Most people in your position would be leveraging their success for social status, the reporter observed. Why the secrecy? I thought about Isabella's disappointed sighs, my parents' constant questions about when I'd get a real job, the way Rodrigo's family looked at me, like I was something they'd scraped off their shoes. Sometimes, I told her, the most powerful position is the one nobody sees coming. The article was scheduled to go live the Monday after the wedding. I'd finally get to step out of the shadows to claim credit for the work that had been transforming industries, while my family counted my failures. But then, 2 days before the wedding, my phone rang with a call that would change everything. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice was one I recognized from business news. Carlos Mendoza, CEO of Mendoza Industries, Rodrigo's father, the man who'd looked at me with such disdain at Christmas dinner. "Is this Precision Industrial Solutions?" he asked, his voice tight with desperation. "This is S. Rodriguez," I replied, using my business voice. "We have a catastrophic situation. Our main production facility is completely down. Every hour of delay is costing us $200,000. We need your team here immediately." The irony was so perfect it took my breath away. The man who dismissed me as a waste of potential was now begging for my help, not knowing he was talking to the mechanic he'd insulted. "I'll need to review the situation before committing my team," I said professionally. "Whatever you charge, we'll pay double. This could bankrupt us if we can't get back online before Monday." Monday. The day after his son's wedding. The day my Forbes article would reveal exactly who had been saving companies like his. I smiled in my empty garage, surrounded by the tools my family was so ashamed of. "I'll be there first thing in the morning." Wedding day dawned perfect and beautiful. From my garage, I could practically picture the chaos at St. Michael's Cathedral. Imported Italian flowers, society photographers, VIP guests arriving in their Maseratis and Bentleys. "You sure you don't want to crash the party?" Miguel asked as we worked on a classic Mustang. "She's still your sister. She made it very clear she didn't want me there," I replied. though my phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the Forbes article went live at 6 a.m. Headlines everywhere. The mystery engineer, how Sofia Rodriguez revolutionized manufacturing from a small garage, and the $50 million solution. Meet the industrial efficiency genius CEOs can't stop calling. Reporters were already calling for interviews. LinkedIn notifications flooded my phone. Old college classmates suddenly wanted to catch up, but radio silence from my family. They were too busy with wedding preparations to check the news. At 11:47 a.m., exactly 13 minutes before Isabella was supposed to walk down the aisle, my phone rang. S. Rodriguez? This is Carlos Mendoza. His voice was frantic, desperate. Our entire production line crashed an hour ago. Computer systems fried. We're looking at a complete shutdown. I could hear chaos in the background. People shouting, machines grinding to a halt, the sound of a multi-million-dollar operation collapsing in real time. Mr. Mendoza, we'll pay anything. Triple your usual rate. Our company won't survive a week-long shutdown. Please, we need you here now. The cathedral was only 20 minutes away. I could be there in my coveralls, the same grease-stained clothes my family was so ashamed of, walking into their perfect wedding to save the groom's family empire. I'll be right there. I arrived at St. Michael's Cathedral at 12:15 p.m. The ceremony should have started, but chaos had erupted instead. Security tried to stop me at the door, but Carlos Mendoza was already rushing over. "Thank God you're here," he said, not recognizing me in my work clothes. "We've set up a command center in the cathedral's conference room. The entire board is here via video call." He led me through corridors lined with wedding guests, past confused politicians and business elites, into a room where Rodrigo sat with his laptop, looking devastated. "The timing couldn't be worse," Carlos continued. "My son's wedding, all these important guests, and our company is literally collapsing." That's when Rodrigo looked up and saw me. His face went white. "Sofia? What are you doing here?" Carlos stopped mid-sentence, confused. "You know our consultant?" "Dad," Rodrigo said slowly, "this is Sofia Rodriguez, Isabella's sister, the mechanic." The silence was deafening. "That's impossible," Carlos said, looking between us. S. Rodriguez is the head of Precision Industrial Solutions, the woman who saved Toyota $50 million. The Forbes article this morning. "What Forbes article?" Rodrigo asked, pulling out his phone. I watched as recognition dawned on his face. Scrolling through the article that detailed my work, my company, my achievements. The same achievements his father had been praising in business meetings for months. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Sofia, you're the S. Rodriguez? The efficiency expert? The one who revolutionized Ford's electric vehicle production?" Behind him, the door burst open. Isabella appeared in her wedding dress, makeup streaked, holding her phone. "Rodrigo, what's taking so long? Everyone's waiting and—" She stopped when she saw me. "Sofia, what are you doing here? I told you." "Bella," Rodrigo interrupted, his voice shaking. "Do you know who your sister really is?" He turned his phone toward her, showing the Forbes article. The headline was clear: Sofia Rodriguez, the industrial genius behind manufacturing's biggest transformations. Isabella's bouquet hit the floor. "That can't be right," she whispered. "She's just a mechanic, she works in a garage." "She owns the consulting firm that's been saving Fortune 500 companies millions of dollars," Carlos said, still staring at me in disbelief. "Including ours." The look on their faces? Absolutely priceless. The next few hours were a whirlwind. While 300 wedding guests waited in the cathedral, I stood in my grease-stained coveralls, tablet in hand, diagnosing the catastrophic failure that threatened to bankrupt Mendoza Industries. The same family who'd looked down on me 6 months earlier now hung on my every word. "Your main server array overheated and cascaded through your backup systems," I explained to the emergency board meeting Carlos had convened via video call. "But the real problem is deeper. Your infrastructure was running beyond capacity. This was inevitable." "How long to fix it?" Fernando Mendoza, Rodrigo's uncle, asked from the screen. 72 hours for a complete rebuild. But I can get you back to 60% capacity in 6 hours if we prioritize critical production lines." "Do it," Carlos said immediately. "Whatever it costs." $3 million, I said without hesitation. "Plus overtime for my team." The number that would have shocked my family 6 months ago didn't even make Carlos blink. Done. While I coordinated with my engineers via phone, send the backup server array from our Detroit office now. The wedding guests were getting restless. I could hear the governor's wife asking someone, "Isn't that the mechanic's sister? Why is she running their emergency meeting?" Rumors were spreading through the cathedral like wildfire, something about a business crisis, about the bride's sister appearing in work clothes, about Forbes articles and family secrets. Politicians were Googling my name on their phones, their faces shifting from confusion to impressed recognition. Isabella sat in the bridal room, still in her dress, staring at her phone as she scrolled through article after article about my success. My parents had arrived, looking bewildered and ashamed. "We had no idea," my mother kept repeating. "How could we not know?" "Because you never asked," I said simply, not looking up from my tablet as I supervised the emergency repairs remotely. "You saw coveralls and assumed failure. You never bothered to ask what else I might be doing." My father cleared his throat. "The house you bought, we thought you were struggling to make payments. I paid cash, 3 years ago." The silence was deafening. Rodrigo appeared in the doorway. "Sofia, I owe you an apology." "We all do." "You owe me nothing," I replied, still focused on my work. "But you owe your guests an explanation. They've been waiting 2 hours. "The wedding," Isabella said suddenly. "We can't get married like this, not with everything falling apart." "Why not?" I asked, finally looking up. "Your groom's family business will survive. I'm about to save them from bankruptcy. Seems like a perfect day for a wedding." But Isabella was spiraling. "Everyone knows now. About you, about how we treated you. How can we face them?" I closed my tablet and really looked at my sister for the first time that day. She was still beautiful in her designer dress, but she looked small, scared, like the little girl who used to come to me when she had nightmares. "Bella," I said gently, "the only thing people will remember about today is that your family pulled together in a crisis. That when your new in-laws needed help, a Rodriguez was there to provide it." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Can you ever forgive me?" "I already have," I said. "But don't ever forget the lesson. Success isn't about what you wear or where you work. It's about the value you create in the world." The wedding happened at sunset, 6 hours later than planned. I attended in a borrowed dress from Isabella's maid of honor, still coordinating repairs via text message. During his speech, Carlos Mendoza made a point of thanking me publicly, announcing my role in saving the company, and revealing that the mechanic his family had dismissed was actually the renowned industrial consultant they'd been praising in business circles for years. The applause was thunderous, and I watched several guests frantically updating their LinkedIn networks. The governor himself came over during cocktails to ask for my business card. Later, as the party wound down, Isabella found me on the cathedral steps. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "I should have said that years ago." A year later, Rodriguez Auto Repair still serves as my R&D lab, though there's now a plaque on the wall. Precision Industrial Solutions, where innovation meets experience. My family visits regularly now. My parents even brag about their CEO daughter, though it took them months to pronounce industrial efficiency consultant correctly. And every time someone walks into my shop and gives me that look because of my coveralls, I just smile. Sometimes the greatest success stories start with dirty hands. Have you ever had to prove your worth to family who dismissed your dreams? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if this story reminded you that success comes in many forms, even ones covered in motor oil.